Uh-oh. Hello? Hello?
Those are muted, that's why.
Can you hear us now, Brian?
Oh, yeah, I hear you now very well.
Okay, great.
But,
I'm just gonna leave the meeting. For the audio line.
This is the stuff that fish being said, and you said on yesterday, in 34. So I don't have something that is, you have had a chance to review the draft B. And so I'll send you on Wednesday. Okay.
Guessing not.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I see I was asked today that, I think my request was. I'm gonna check against the previous one.
Okay, yeah. The copy of the plans I have shows that whole page overs, I think it does.
I got 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Can we on? You got 6, let's rock and roll.
Yeah, we are unmuted and the audio is on, we're good to go.
Good evening and welcome to the Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors, May 10th, 2023. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our chief pilot and chairman, David Pride, can't be with us tonight, so I'm going to apply left seat here and carry on the proceedings. My name is Robert Lovenheim. I'm vice chairman, and to my side here is our chief of flight operations and township manager Billy Hollica. Over here is our chief purser and solicitor, Ron Karasak, and after him is chief engineer John Spessler. So and on the radio up there is let's call it center control Brian Barrett, our third supervisor.
Thank you.
So let's take off. We'll do some turns about a point. We'll do some touch and goes, and then we'll land with a full stop and go home. Public hearings, announcements. Do we have any announcements? Okay.
Actually, we do, just a reminder, everybody, we've got cleanup coming up next week, May 17th through 20th. Further information can be found on our website.
We have 3 sets of minutes to approve: April 12th, April 26th, and May 1st joint session between the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
May I say something?
Yes.
The April 12th minutes, the conversation about Mr. Vanderbilt, you didn't put in hardly anything that Mr. Levenheim said. Did you please fill it in?
That's up to the Board of Supervisors, and those minutes were documented, so they're actually not supposed to be released to the public until the board has had time to review them.
I would be happy to table that and review it, but quite honestly, I can't remember a lot of it, but I'll be happy to look at it. So let's say the April 26th and the May 1st meeting notes, minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve those? Well, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? So I
I'll
guess
second everything, but that one situation that was brought up.
Then we'll
So I approve the minutes, Robert.
The second to April 26th and May 1st are approved, so moved, and April 12th will be reviewed and taken up at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Report. We do have no public hearings here. Right. No plans to act on. Do we have a solicitor's report?
My report was going to generally deal with the Airstrip Road condemnation update, but we have Attorney Kanzinger here, who flew in all the way from wherever she came from, I think Pittsburgh or something. So I'm going to defer to her to update that when we get to that point in the agenda. Other than that, it's just been the preparing documents with respect to Eagle Valley, the performance agreement and the land development agreement, et cetera, and some other matters. In fact, today was a recent right to know request response. So other than that, that's it.
Engineers report.
I really have nothing to report on other than what's already on the agenda further down.
Now let's move on to new business. We'll consider the consent agenda. It's a change order for Kings Pond Road culvert time extension. I believe that's only so that they can be started after school is over for the season. And I'll make a motion to approve that. Brian?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Right, motion in a second. The consent agenda is approved. Let's move on to, you want to move on to, this is, B is all right. We're going to change the order of these a little bit because someone isn't here yet. But let's move on to the fire EMS contributions discussion.
Hi, it's Lucas DiMattolo, Budget and Finance Manager for the township. I'm filling in to talk about our EMS contributions. So as we know, in our last year's budgeting, or this past year's budgeting session, we budgeted additional funds for our fire and EMS services, knowing how important they are to the township. We have not, yet, investigated the fair split of those funds, so, tabling that for the moment. We usually make our contributions to the fire companies in June and September. So I'm recommending the same contributions, that we have made this year, for Marshall Creek, Shawnee, and Water Gap. So exact same contributions, with the additional fund that we budgeted, to be addressed at a later time. Just to make sure that we're funding at the same level as we usually do. We just need to approve those, at one of these meetings today, to make sure that I can issue those checks in June.
And the EMS,
And EMS, we provide, EMS funding, Bushkill and Suburban, once a year in September. With, Bushkill EMS has reached out to us and asked us for additional funding, for an, urgent emergency need, with vehicle repairs, totaling $5,755.57. I am recommending that we do also approve this additional contribution at this meeting, as these funds will come out of the extra funds that we budgeted anyway. And we can just ensure that we are saving, these funds will be pulled out of what they would have gotten from the extra.
so what you're recommending, we approve those, and as far as the fire, will we approve them, or do you want to wait till the contribution that will be in June? But
So I want to approve those so that I can issue those checks in June. I just don't want to wait until the June meeting, because I'll be a little bit later in the month. I want to make sure we get it out to the fire companies as soon as we can in June.
looks like we have some questions and comments back there. No,
No, I have a question. I just want to know how much is allocated to Delaware Water Gap Fire Department in June?
I can't hear you, can speak up.
How much is allocated to the Delaware Water Gap Fire Department for June?
So her question was, how much is allocated to Delaware Gap Fire Company, for their first half of their contribution? I can comment that that's $6,510. Their overall contribution every year is $13,020. So this is the first half of their contribution that we have given historically.
And I have one follow-up. What's the additional money allocated for that you're not voting on tonight?
So we budgeted in our budget last year towards fire and EMS contributions. We budgeted an additional $25,500 in this line item to be split amongst fire companies and EMS services based on, certain needs. We have not, addressed that at the moment. So this is just our normal contributions that we're doing.
Gotcha, thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve the fire EMS contribution?
I'll second the motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. We're going to change the order here because the woman who was going to speak about the 209 Ravens Nest stormwater waiver request is a little late today. So let's move on to the discussion of airstrip road condemnation updates.
And Mr. Chair, I would defer again to Attorney Kanzinger, who has her finger directly to the pulse of this and has had it for some time, and have her update the board. I was going to propose a resolution that we had continued from a last meeting or two ago to approve of the declaration of taking, but there has been some change to both the exhibit, the bearings and distances, and I'm told that Attorney Wolf was going to send me some changes, but I haven't received them yet. That being said, let me turn it over to counsel and she can update you much better than I can.
Hi, I'm Courtney Kanzinger. I'm attorney for Scannell Properties. We are the developer of the Lycon project on the south side of Airstrip Road. And I flew in from Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, but a little bit farther, but I was asking Slopester Crossing if the weather is always this wonderful. I may just have to stay a little longer than I planned. But yes, we have had some changes. We're trying to button up this declaration of taking to ensure that we're naming all the appropriate parties to this condemnation action so that there's no due process challenges down the line. It's proving somewhat difficult because this railroad acquired its property in 1901, and then the railroad was abandoned in the late 30s, and portions of it were then conveyed to other landowners. So we're just trying to do the tracing, and the old records are not all indexed properly. So we now have two different title companies working on this. The Broadhead Creek Regional Authority, who will ultimately own the water line that is going to be brought in through this area, is conducting their own title search to have their searcher confirm with our searcher that we're all in agreement as to who is to be named. And as you know, these things take some time. So we are hopeful, cautiously optimistic that we can present the taking with all parties in agreement at your next meeting.
And the issue obviously is that the tenant or prospective tenant, no, they want to move this matter along. They don't want to wait 3 years.
Well,
They'll be able
I
to access
agree,
the lot.
it's going on so long, I can't remember the beginning of it. But, if it can be the next meeting, that would be great. This just seems like an issue where finally, if there's no real resolution among the title companies, we've got to take some stand on it. And maybe, I have the risk of liability on our part, something has to be done just to get it done.
I have prepared the declaration of taking already, so it's really ready to go, except for adding in who are the condomnees or the people to be served. We have since had a little twist with the ECRA saying, well, we want to make sure we approve that, because if we don't, we're not going to take dedication of the lines, and then now we have another issue. So we may have to balance any like there a bit too, but hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a resolution adopted and a declaration by it.
Thank you for coming all the way in to say as little as there is to say. I just hope we can resolve this.
Yeah, we do too. We want to, turn the building over to our tenant in a timely fashion, not only for them, but we please our lender and everybody else involved in the projects.
And council was here doing extensive research at the courthouse today on these various deeds and stuff.
Is it open?
It was a little hard to find the entrance, but we found it.
And you gotta be a little careful where you're going. Guys own cars and everything, but anyway, thank you for being here, council, and thank you for updating the board and taking what I was supposed to have done. So
Thank you all for your.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ron, Ron, it's Brian.
That's right.
Mark Wolf's letter to you, actually on May 8th, he seemed to get down to, and I really don't understand it, name it John Doe and his heirs and assign them as the owners. Is that a last case scenario?
Well, I mean, you can always name a John Doe if you're not sure who it is, or a Jane Doe for that matter. But I don't know if I was the buyer of that property, if I was representing the buyer, and representing, say, okay, we're gonna take over the Bygone project or the Black Buffalo project. I don't know if I'd be comfortable with the John Doe and the Jane title, in a condemnation case. I would rather much say, this is who we believe to be the owner of the property, whether it's someone under a trust or whether it's something else, or proceed with an abandonment of the line. So this way, then it gets formally abandoned. It's all clean. We don't have any issues with someone later coming back to bite us, although this going back to the 1900s, I don't see that being very likely, but I suppose anything could occur. And then with the abandonment in place, we then just proceed with the declaration of taking. It's a little longer process, but it should not be that much longer if in fact that's what the title company suggests. Now, again, as I told Attorney Kanziger, and as I told Mark Wolf, and I have since told Mark or John Krabosnik, this is their plan. I don't want the township to be caught and say, well, you didn't sue the right people, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. We are a conduit assisting the developer in getting this section condemned so they could put water lines through, gas lines through, et cetera. So whatever the developer or developer's attorney tells me to do, that's what I'm going to do, because they're the ones in the final analysis will have to then be subjected to that claim. So that's where we are. I would prefer a long way around, as lawyers do with questions. I would prefer not to have a John Doe if I could help it.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, can we move on to the next item here?
Yeah.
Next item is discussion of the 167 stormwater ordinance update.
And the only thing, if you remember from last meeting, I gave a pretty long recital of what had taken place, and then I thought the next step should be. That being, I should take a look at the proposed model versus your existing ordinance. Incorporate what we think is beneficial to the township and to its residents, and there may be a couple items in there that really don't serve any real purpose. I think the two questions that I had asked the board to consider to give me some direction was if they were comfortable with the buffers that are already in their existing ordinance. If they are, we will just continue to do those. And do they wish to continue with the process whereby if someone needs relief or work within one of those buffers, that it is the board of supervisors that grants that relief and not the zoning hearing board? Those are the two items I need some direction on.
Can I give you my answer right now, John? I say that we stay with the same buffer, the 167. I'm not sure the second circumstance, so.
I guess, yeah, I guess the second circumstance, I can tell you that the majority of the municipalities, and I was at a meeting where there were probably at least 10 municipalities represented. The majority felt that their board, their everyday governing board, should be the ones to make that decision, as opposed to who are elected to represent the residents of the township, as opposed to the zoning hearing board who gets appointed by the board. So most municipalities are in favor of keeping the board of supervisors in charge of granting any relief that might be petitioned for the township.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, again, then my vote is okay on that also, if you're taking count.
This is discussion and really nothing to add on at this point. Thank you for all the information.
Right.
Robert, before we move on, I actually do have a couple of things. John, I had the opportunity to go through this. There are a few grammatical errors I pointed out in here. But I also wanted to point out that there's no definition for lake pond or vernal pond. And I don't know if that's a problem or not.
It is, and I will check on that.
I've got it.
Because they, you know, and they do use those terms within the ordinance, so they should clearly be defined.
Yeah, on page 20, or excuse me, on page 19, they refer to a riparian buffer. That's located adjacent to streams, lakes, ponds, and wetlands, but they don't define lakes, ponds, or vernal ponds, which is on page 28. I'll hand this to you with all my notes.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna move on to non-governmental contributions for 2023. This has been a case of kicking the can down the road for several sessions, and I believe that because Chairman Pride isn't here and he has some very well-formulated opinions on this, we shouldn't act on this tonight. But I will say some things about why I find it problematic, and that is that giving to charities the name of the township has been something that's been going on in this township and many others for a long, long time. It's a tradition, and it was going on long before I became a supervisor, Brian, probably before you did too. And what bothers me is this: even though these are good causes and they're needy causes, anyone any place from, animal shelters to historical societies and onward from there. It's the taxpayers' money that we're giving away here. And I don't feel that the township has the right to make contributions in the name of the taxpayers haven't approved. And I'm looking for some better way of doing this. Either we don't do it, or perhaps we can find some way of involving the residents who pay taxes in either suggesting, approving, or putting together a committee of people who would tell us what they want to give and who they want to give it to. I'm very disturbed about the idea that we're giving money away. Because Brian, you've been at this longer than I have. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think if we could get a committee together, and it's been a while, quite a while, and you're right, Robert, let's find out how they feel, the public feels, and then we can come back and make our decision. I do know this, contributions for some of the dog and cat compounds actually in the long run help the whole community. Nothing worse than having dozens of feral cats running around, or not so much wild dogs, but that happens too. But I'd like to see what they say. A committee, again, that it sounds like a lot of work, but not really. Just call people we feel would be interested. All three of us can call who we feel is interested. Put a committee of, I don't know, half a dozen together and see what they feel.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah, and Robert, well, I guess I was trying to agree with you. So.
Anyway, I think we're on the same track here, and I would just move to postpone this to the next meeting so Mr. Pride can voice his feelings too. It should be the three of us, but I would I certainly agree that it should be somebody else, some other citizens here, weighing in on what we should do with their money. So,
You should know, Supervisor Lobenheim, that several years ago, I had looked at this very issue because I felt that the donations that were being made by several of the municipalities, which I represent, mostly townships, but also a couple of boroughs, just seemed to be a little out of hand. And in my research and in checking with PSATs, I didn't check with PSAT, which is the State Association of Boroughs. They made very clear, my research made very clear, that the township can only do what the legislature has said it can do, or things incidental to that. If you go to the second class township code and look at the corporate powers, and there are several, there's maybe 20 or so different corporate powers, nowhere in there does it say that the township can make donations. It says you can deal with animal shelters and different things, and of course fire and rescue and parks, etc. So that in an indirect way you can make some donations, but just saying let's give to the Bushville Township Library. I'm not quite sure if that just can be done, but I know it has been done for years. I don't mean to say that they're not good causes, and I don't mean to frustrate people who are attempting to do that, but your inquiry as to this issue does have a legal basis for it.
well, that's interesting to know, and I guess tradition is no reason to continue if we're not within the law. And as Brian has said, I think the solution first is to have a committee of people who are residents here and taxpayers try to advise us on what they think. Yes, sir.
I like your points, well said. When I served in the East Stroudsburg Borough Council, we gave money to various organizations, and I voted against giving to one particular one year after year because of their politics didn't align with mine. But I did wonder perhaps the council would be able to answer. Just as a township applies for grants from the state and federal government, is there a possibility for charitable organizations to apply to the township for such grants? This way you're not just dispensing it, willy-nilly because someone fancies pretty flowers. You know what I mean?
I don't know if they could apply to the township, but certainly they could apply for a grant and.
Oh, yeah,
And
no,
we
definitely.
could, pass a resolution saying that we approved of it or that we would like it to happen, we can do that. But at least that's not a direct draw on the taxpayers' money from the township. That's, I think, what, Ron and I are talking about and what Brian said. So, I really don't want to make a decision on this without letting Chairman Pride weigh in on it. So I would move that we postpone this to our next meeting and take it up again then. Brian, what do you say?
I agree with it, definitely, yep.
So, that's a motion and a second, I guess. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Robert, can I just say something? You
Yes.
talk about putting a group together. I think that's a good idea. I'd like to see that done for all our parks and other things. Where's our community? We always used to have this place full. We don't have any community involvement anymore.
I'd like to see a Parks Committee. And the last Parks Committee dissipated after Rich Cullen left it. And we've never been able to replace it. As Brian knows, we tried. And maybe we can try again. Maybe Jacob knows some people would be on it, but we had, as you remember, Brian, we interviewed people, they said they'd come and never showed up.
Oh, God, yes, yeah. It really got to the point it was tough to get anybody. And if we got them there, they weren't, these people who really wanted to do something just didn't pan out, I guess. I don't know. But just walked away, went away. But yeah, we could try that. I don't know who mentioned that, but yeah, that'd be a good. Rich Cullen was excellent. I think, Robert, you agree with me on that. He really did a good job with our Parks and Rec, and he put it all together, and he had his meetings, and he kept people informed, and it worked. Rich is no longer part of that, but hopefully we can come up with another Richard.
Well, one of the ways we might be able to motivate people, or at least let them know that it's possible, is a newsletter that we could get distributed to the whole township. And one of the problems here is that we don't have a newsletter. We don't have, let's say, the mechanism of Middle Smithfield with enough personnel and executives to publish it. They publish one every quarter, and it's also very expensive. I think it's somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a year just to publish their newsletter, which we don't have.
I'd like that.
Can't we do it online?
Electronic newsletter.
I mean,
It's well received, but sometime I think last summer it vanished. You can go online to the website for the township, you can see old issues, but there are no new issues. And
Right.
somehow,
Right.
we just have to not only resurrect that, but find somebody who can get the word out through social media that it's there and get people to read it. Yes,
In Delaware Water Gap, we have, when we get our quarterly bills, in there is a newsletter. I mean, you have to just make sure one person doesn't monopolize it for political reasons, but you put everything in there that's coming up. And you're gonna send out the bills anyway to your people, so if you could just be one page, two-sided, and just have the questionnaire in there, and it won't cost you any more money.
well, actually, we tried at one time sending out a newsletter with a tax bill, which we could do. But
Yep.
either nobody read it or nobody ever commented, we never heard back on it.
I mean, that's, Annette Atkinson does a wonderful, Annette Atkinson does a wonderful job with her little Smithfield on Facebook. I mean, every week she even puts up what's going on. And they've got more, and that's what amazes me, they've got more committees for more things, and what do we have?
It's very expensive though, Pam. But how about this? Doesn't PSATs have a program to work with us, municipalities, to do a quarterly, even look for sponsors?
I don't know.
I'd leave that up to you, Robert, but you know what? I think we could do it again or try.
Another possibility just for starting to build interest, maybe joining the Pocono Mountain Visitors Bureau, because they now have their own television channel where we could probably get publicity. And the other thing is even more important is they have an excellent analytics department that can parse through anything that's done online and give us some data that I think is fairly astounding about who's reading, how long they're reading, who passes it on to someone else, what we can do to improve it. So it might be worth joining them. I think they'd become very proactive in signing up all local businesses. Maybe they can sign up a township too. So. Anyway,
Well, again, let me look. Julia,
Yes,
hello?
Brian.
hey, I know you're busy, but can you consider getting in touch? Look at PSAT and see what they offer. I'm going back a couple of years, but they really and truly had some good programs to assist each township with a newsletter. Of course, they wanted you to include them in it too, you know. But anyway, I think it might be worth. It's a call around.
I think it's a good first move, just to see what there is that they do offer. Why not?
Amen.
Why,
Yeah.
why couldn't we
Okay.
go to somebody up to Middle Smithfield and sit with a net and see what, I mean, they've got older people, they've got gardening clubs, they've got everything, and see what they're
They
doing.
have a staff of 10 people.
Well, it doesn't,
That's the difference.
I remember when Al Wilson was supervisor, like he called me home, you know, to be on the sign committee. You gotta know people and you just call them. I mean, you must have enough friends that you could call.
Possibly. The one thing I always go back to with Middle Smithfield is they have something we don't, it's called money.
They're a lot bigger
Money,
than we are.
yeah. Money.
If you look through the
Okay.
list of employees there, they have employees with titles, I don't even know what they mean, but they're there. Anyway, we've tabled that till next week. We can move back to item C, which is to consider the 209 Ravens Nest stormwater waiver request. We have somebody here who wants to speak on that. Come up here.
Good evening.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Maureen Perito. This is my husband, John Perito.
Okay.
And our designer is on the phone. His name is Ty. He designed the stormwater management plan. So in 2021, we purchased about 209 Ravens. And we knew that there was wetlands on the property. We just didn't know that it was that it was covering the entrance of the lot. So because the wetlands was larger than what we were given when we were given the subdivision plot and some surveys, we ended up having to design our home closer to the golf course. And I received permission from I didn't know anything about buffers. I didn't know anything about
From who?
So we designed the home and we ended up pushing up towards the right side of the lot. And I got permission from the golf course and from the grantor. The deed, my deed is restricted. So I received permission from them to build closer to the road. And I received permission from the golf course for some easements. And now I need relief on 4 items listed on the review that LVL did on my stormwater management plan. And Ty is on the phone. He knows a little bit more about it. So we're seeking relief for those four items.
So you satisfied the conservation, paragraph, right? John, do you know about this?
Yeah, I do. What Marine, we call you Marine, has described is accurate, where deed restrictions. Limiting the size of the building that could be built and how close it could be to the golf course, et cetera. I did see correspondence, which that has been waived, so that that's no longer an issue. What still has to be discussed is, and this goes to the Act 167 plan. The Act 167 plan established buffers around wetlands and other areas, and their improvements by necessity. If they are to improve this lot at all, their improvements go into these buffer areas, which is not permitted by the Stormwater Management Act, and they should grant a waiver. Now, I do have a question for Ron, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Ron. That's okay. And you may not answer to this. Their lot it's in, where is it, in Fox?
It's on, Raven's Nest Road.
Yeah, I forget the name. The Wolf Hollow, is that the name of it?
Yes, we'll follow up.
Yeah, that was approved in 2005. The stormwater management ordinance establishing these buffers was approved and adopted in 2006.
Right.
I don't know the answer.
Well, the issue becomes is that, you know, if there was a home there already, and if in fact there were things that have been done prior to ordinance enactment, would argue that, you know, they're grandfathered and you're okay, but the improvements, et cetera, proposed, and the ordinance is in fact now, I think they may need to comply unless they get a waiver.
Well, one could argue that the property was purchased, what is being built now could be built.
That would be my argument, that the lot was created with the intent of building.
But that issue is more with them and their seller, not with them in the township.
Well,
But obviously, we want to try to keep people in some time, what will accommodate.
what we're trying to do is find some work that these people can build.
Right, exactly, that's what I kind of feel.
That's what now, is there a possibility we could do that?
I believe you have the authority, and this is what we discussed 40 minutes ago. The Board of Supervisors has the authority to grant waivers,
Right.
and you can do it.
Waivers
Now,
on what? On what, John?
building-
Grant waivers on what?
On constructing certain portions of their improvements within the inner and outer buffers adjacent to the wetlands.
And Brian, I think this is at the lower end of Wolf Hollow, right? Which are a couple of lots there that are questionable as far as what you could build on them just because of the terrain. And if you say it's between buyer and seller, they bought it in good faith, and it was sold, I assume, in good faith, believing that you could build on it. Because at that time, you're saying you couldn't. Yes.
Well, as I always say, tell them to get an attorney. They're in a civil situation, but be that as it may, what does a golf course have to do with it?
Well, there were deed restrictions because the golf course surrounds a number of these lots, and the deed restrictions stated how far a building had to be away from the property line adjacent to the golf course. They did get proper relief from that. The golf course had the ability to grant that relief, and they did. So that's no longer an issue. The issue, that was not a township restriction. That was a private restriction between the golf course and the individual lots. What
Right.
remains are the buffers around the existing wetlands, which the township adopted in 2006.
Okay,
So
hey, John, who established those wetlands?
I'm sorry,
Who established the wetlands and the parameters?
I I believe, well, the wetlands are there. I believe their consultant identified them. And they did acquire a permit from the DEP for their driveway to cross the wetlands. They got a GP, which is permissible, to cross a portion of the wetlands with their driveway. So I'm sure the DEP, in issuing that permit, verified the location of the wetlands.
Okay. Have we talked to the county? It seems we should be speaking with the people out at, maybe they have, I'm not sure, but at the conservation district.
It's not about it, it's like the side.
They're the ones that they can authorize certain requirements that will allow people to build with certain, again, requirements.
They satisfied their requirements for an MPDS permit or their erosion and sedimentation control. I don't remember whether they needed an MPDS permit or not. No, they didn't need an MPDS permit. No, the disturbance was less than an acre.
I think this is very similar to another request we had to build a house in Price's Landing. Remember that one?
Oh,
Which is
yeah.
on wet. And,
Yep.
you know, I'm feeling that if we granted that and they had all their paperwork in place, and it seems like with this, it's pretty much the same thing. We can either be obstructionist by saying, the house is now has to abide by the buffers, but we can also say, well, the buffers weren't there when you bought the land and you planned the house. That was passed afterwards. So it seems like we could give a waiver, just like we did in Price's Landing. And
Well, it wouldn't be like that. We had 3 hearings on that. If you remember, Robert, we had engineers and everybody else. Here's what I want to say. I don't know enough about it. Sorry to say I do not know enough about it, but I'd like to talk to Robert, yourself, and John Tressler also. And so, having said that, I'm not prepared to take any action this evening.
John, what do you say? We'll get together in council on this?
Yeah.
You bet.
I'm sorry, you come all the way in here, but we'll consider this at our next meeting. As you can see, we'd love to find a way. But legally, we have to find something that protects us, protects you. So we're,
Let me say for us, let me say this, Mr. Chair, obviously, you need to grant the waivers to give them relief, you get, because if you don't do that, the next person will say, we did it for them, you gotta do it for me, so you have to grant the waivers. And perhaps, Brian, a resolution of this, I don't remember what happened with the King's Landing matter, but if John can say, based upon what I see here, and we can set aside X number of dollars in escrow in the event there's damage to wetlands, then you can make that a condition of your waiver and they can post the escrow, assuming it's reasonable, and they can go along their merry way. Maybe that could be a way it could be addressed.
that sounds reasonable, but I think we'll counsel on this till our next meeting, all right? Okay. We'll do I hear a motion to postpone this to our next meeting? Brian?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, let's come back, but we appreciate it. Board of Supervisors report, nothing except bills to be paid. General fund, we have bills of $218,891.95. Do I have a motion to pay the bill?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's it. Any public comments? Yes,
Coming in tonight, I noticed, have you looked at the little house down here?
I can't hear you.
Have you looked at the little house down here, the cabin lately?
No, it's in bad shape.
Yeah. And there's an arbor, which really isn't much of cleaning on the side, before that house gets in any worse shape. Gotta be taken care of. Now, another thing, I contacted Ken, which I don't know why I bothered. The cigar place, there's a beer and cigar place down here that, our old building.
Which one? There are two of them.
Yeah, the one in our old building, the old township building.
Okay,
I was putting up the sign and I went, the old house, when we had it, one of the men fell through the floor. A lot of the windows are knocked out and boarded up, but somebody's living in it.
this is the little yellow house.
Yeah.
Right?
Somebody's living in it. Then they have a container next door and on the side it's all piled up with garbage. Then you go behind our old building and there's an old truck that's abandoned, a pretty big one. I don't know how they got it in
I've
there.
seen that.
And bags of garbage, and I'm sure they're right down the hill, this Silver Lake. But there's papers all over the place. Why?
Can I interfere? Robert, I actually saw this and I couldn't believe it. It's a mess and it's dangerous. It's like a dump. Now, I don't know what the hell we could do, but I think we should get Ken down there to really take a look around there. And the creek is right there. And then come back and report to us. Or report to you or Jacob. And I'd like to be listened in. But I really think that's it. I asked him to do it 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
So, well, he was on vacation. Let me get with him and also, I'll call KP myself and tell him, you better clean this thing up because Ken's gonna come down.
Well, that house probably ought to be condemned. Can you do that?
But,
The house has got to be condemned and somebody's living in it.
I remember a year ago, he was trying to kick somebody out of it, so that's the last I heard, but again, Ken should look into that.
All right, and the other thing, there's two
Yeah.
signs that, Brian, can I talk for a minute? There are two signs there for Shawnee discount tickets. There is no such Shawnee discount tickets.
You're correct.
So they should be taken down.
Well, is that house owned by Shawnee or owned?
Well, that's $1 million question. You know, Charlie Kirk would like to flip flop everything. Michael was here, maybe could. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, it should be taken down, and the house should be empty, and we should find out who owns it.
Now, the other thing, and I don't wanna cause trouble, but we have an Airbnb ordinance. If you look on it, the first three are in Smithfield Township, one is right under our noses here in the building. I guess Ken doesn't look,
Which one is that?
I don't want to say, you go on Airbnb and look.
Hmm?
You go on Airbnb and look,
What,
it's right at the end of our driveway here.
Wood Falls Road, across the street?
And there's two in Shawnee at least.
One of the problems we have with our ordinance is enforcing it because it's under the zoning code. I'm hoping when we redo the signage ordinance, we do it as a separate chapter, which means that we could cite these people immediately because it's false advertising, both online or anywhere else. Right now, what Ken has to do is, first he has to find them, then he has to cite them and give them 30 days notice. Then if they don't do anything for 30 days, he can go to the magistrate, which takes months.
Yeah.
Then from the magistrate, he can get a judgment where he can try to find them and get them to pay.
Well, they're not really, it's not causing a problem, these aren't causing a problem, they're not the party houses. What I'm saying, we're gonna have this ordinance, and he's sitting down there in that office, I don't know what the hell's going on around here. You and I know what he does.
It's whack-a-mole. It's been a terrible problem, and the only way to contain it is if people who see these ads online tell us about it, at least we can try.
But he did stand up there in the corner, all he's gonna do is on his computer, but that place is a KP, it's. That's the entrance almost to Shawnee, I had to call Shawnee because where their signs were, they never mowed their grass, the grass was this high.
Well, I will get on that because KP has been talking to us about things he'd like to do. So he has every reason to cooperate.
All right. Thank
I
you.
promise you I'll get on.
And look at that house, please. That's not that
I was
house.
just right across the road.
I'm not our little cabin down here.
You mean Russ's old house?
No, our little cabin, our log
Oh, you
cabin
mean
down
you're
here.
talking about the cabin?
All the cement's coming out.
But I'll take a look at that too. Any other comments? I think.
I
it's
make a
time to-
motion, we adjourn.
I was just gonna say that. And I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Robert, thanks.
I'm gonna go get cheese.
Have a good night, guys. Live well, thank you.
All right,
See you guys.
John,
Yes, Brian.
Ron, take care.